Namaste and welcome. My name is Krista, and I'm going to be guiding us through a bit of a preparation for learning how to fly today. So just talking about arm balances and how we can approach arm balances with a few different options, specifically looking at Bakasana, crow, Titivasana, firefly, and Bhujapadasana, arm pressure pose. So one of the things that is pretty important when we're looking at arm balances is the hands and our arms. There's lots of aspects that we're going to get into today, but I just want to start with this because in our learn to fly and in our arm balances, these are our roots. These are the parts of our bodies that are connected to the ground. So just taking a moment here just to bring your hands in front and just start to do some circles. And a lot of times when we start doing circles, you're going to hear some clicking and some cracking and some movement like that. But just become aware of what range of motion do you have. So taking your hands so that the palms are down, take a moment to draw the fingers back towards your forearms. And just notice, you know, maybe the hands stop a little bit in front of the wrist. Maybe they can come past the wrist. Just noticing what's there. And then take your hands up and draw the fingertips back towards the forearm, the back of your forearm, okay? And of course, this is the shape that they'll be in when we're actually doing an arm balance on the ground. So just doing a couple circles to release that, shake out your hands. Okay, and now gently bring your hand over to the side so that the pinky finger is coming to the outside, okay? And notice that range of motion there, and then bring the thumb in. And you notice how the elbows instantly want to flare out. So try and keep the elbows there and just bring your thumb in. So there might be less range of motion here. The other thing that you can do when you're doing these exercises is just look at each of your hands. You might find that one of your hands has a little bit more range than the other one. So just being aware of that as well. Okay. From here, what we want to do is open up the forearms. Now, you won't typically do this in a lot of classes, but I want to give this to you as a tool because I found it very helpful. So all of the extensors for our arm actually run across the elbow and attach up onto the humerus, okay, onto the lateral epicondyle. And then from here, all of the flexors for the hand that draw the palm down, they come up onto the medial side, medial being more close to the central line of your body, lateral being more to the outside. So both sides, everything that goes across the wrist that starts to extend our fingers, they come, and a lot of those muscles actually attach across the elbow. So thinking about how we can open up that space, take your thumb onto your forearm. Use your right hand coming onto your left arm just for the sake of being on the same side as me. And press down, and you might feel, ooh, it's a little sore or a little tight. And now just slowly draw your fingertips back towards your elbow, and then draw the fingertips to the opposite direction and go back and forth. And you'll notice as you're activating the flexors coming in, the muscles underneath of your thumb are getting tensioned, okay, because they're being activated. So start to slide your hand down and using the back of your fingers to press on the back of your forearm as well. So both sides are getting compressed. And as you go down, it's starting to tension and relax the muscles as you move your wrist. So going back and forth, and you slide all the way down. And this is opening up and loosening the muscles that cross the elbow and cross the wrist. So that's what we're doing. When you get to the bottom, switch over to the other side and just start to release. And I like to do circles with my hands and my wrists, and there's lots of things to open it up. You may find that one arm feels tighter than the other. So just slide that into the back of your memory. Just make a mental note. Become aware of what's unique about your body, where you might have a little bit of extra tension or holding, or a little bit of extra openness or range of motion. And just be aware of that, because that's all going to inform our personal yoga practice and what makes sense for us when we're approaching different postures. So being aware of all that, you can also just grab on the soft tissue of your forearm here and just give it a little bit of a shake, and just come all the way down, and even just straightening your arm while touching that area. And you can do that on both sides. Okay, one last thing that you can do here is right on this area here, so just to the outside of the eye of your elbow and a little bit below onto your forearm. If you pin that down with your fingers like this, then take your thumb and rotate it backward, and you might start to feel the bones of the forearm just gently flicking underneath, and you'll feel the tendon of your muscles here flicking underneath, and this is also going to help to release. You can move your hand, or you can move the hand that's on your arm. So I get a little bit of movement of that muscle here when I move the thumb of the arm that I'm holding. But then if I also take the tissue in my hand here and pull it back and forth, and sometimes you have to move it around to find it, you can feel that little release as well. So these are great ways, especially if you have tight forearms or tennis elbow, golfer's elbow. These are great ways to just start to create more room and space in the tendons here. And it can hurt so good or feel so good when you do it because it's starting to release tension. So that's one way that we can start to create some openness. So maybe it's feeling a little bit more open now. Okay, the other thing that you can do is come up onto your forearm or onto your hands, bring your hands under your shoulders here, and just notice how it feels when you put your hands flat. So notice how the wrist crease is pointing forward and your middle finger is pointing right to the top of the mat. Now your hand, the heel of your hand might be able to firmly get down onto the mat at this point. But what if it doesn't? Because we're not all built the same. So you may find that actually putting your elbow above your wrist doesn't feel so good. And if the heel of the hand isn't getting down, then there might be something that we want to adjust there. So one option here is to fold the mat and bring that underneath the heel of your hand. So this will create less of an angle between how your wrist has to bend to meet the floor. So now you've elevated the wrist slightly. So this is an option just to start getting more range of motion in. Okay, another thing that you may want to do is instead of having your hands directly forward, you might want to just spiral them out. I don't know if you could see that from the side, but so if this is your hands on the ground facing directly forward, what if you were to just slightly turn them off to the side? Attempting some arm balance is just starting to work with our actual range of motion, means maybe turning the wrists out slightly. Now, in all the ones that we're going to do today, I'm going to keep my hands straight forward, but for the purpose of learning how our bodies respond to this, it's important to know it doesn't have to be exactly textbook. You want to be able to be a little bit fluid with what your body's presenting with. So from here, letting your hands be here, underneath of your shoulders, you can press through your hands and start to turn the eye of the elbows forward. And as you press through your hands, feel how that sets your shoulder. In any arm balance that we do, we really want our shoulders to be set. So this I would consider to be a not set shoulder. So if we're sinking into our shoulder blades here, when we try to actually bear weight, there's no support. The arm connects to the shoulder and to the thorax just through muscles only. There's a very free range of motion through this joint. It's the most freely movable synovial joint in the body, pretty much, and that's because it has extreme flexibility, but that means it has the least amount of stability. So we compromise stability for flexibility in this joint in particular, but we can activate stability in order to provide a more sustainable structure to bear weight through. So we can do that by pressing through the hands, gluing the shoulder blade into the rib cage, and feeling how that creates support. The shoulders are drawn down. As you wrap in, we flatten the scapula or the shoulder blade against the rib cage, and now we've got more stability. So take a moment here to lean forward a little bit and to do some circles. So coming out to the side and just explore the range of movement there, and explore how your body, going very slowly, explore how your body is transferring weight through your hands. So there's a very little amount of weight on my hands right now, okay, and I'm still pressing through my palms. Go in the opposite direction as well, and just notice how that feels in your body. So this is helping to create movement, support, and openness through the wrists, okay? Coming back to center. The other thing that we can do here is come down into sitting and bring the hands underneath of the shoulders. So for me, this is where I find that I may not want my fingers pointing directly towards my heels. Okay, if I'm to weight bear, so I can do it, and a lot of us will find that we can do it, but it feels better for my wrist if I slightly turn my hands off to the side. So when I turn my hands off to the side, I feel more support and I feel less pressure through my wrist, and I feel like I can press up and pull the core in and come into that reverse table in a nice comfortable position that helps to open up my shoulders. So this is a really great one here to stretch the pecs, press through the hands, okay, engage your glutes to help lift your hips. And then when you're ready, it's a slow movement all the way down. Hey, circling out your wrists. Okay, allow them to be really nice and relaxed today for our practice. Okay, and then when you come back here, we want to talk a little bit about the core. So any arm balance that we're going to be doing, we want to make sure that there is a pulling into the midline of the body. So if you've ever started to work on your arm balance of crow, you know that through the core is where we want to be engaged, and we want to create that really strong, sustainable structure from one hand up through the shoulder down to the other shoulder. Another thing that can really help when working with crow is to make sure, especially if it's your first time doing it, that you have a block or that you have something else to help focus your awareness on. So from here, now that we've started to look at this, you can come up onto your toes. When you bring your hands down, you want your hands to be in line with your shoulders. One thing that you can find this proper positioning in, especially that stability that we talked about from one hand to the other, is in a pose called plank. When you bring your feet out behind you, okay, setting your hands up under your shoulders, wrist creases typically pointing forward, middle finger pointing forward. From here, notice that there is a position where you can sink a little bit in. And then there's a position where you can glue the inner thighs into the midline of the body. Pull the abdominal muscles up under the rib cage. You see how my lower back just moved? And now press through your hands to create that support and shine the heart forward. So all of this here together creates a sustainable structure where I still have freedom of movement, strong core, everything's drawing into the midline of my body. And this starts to create a feeling of lightness, a feeling of lifting, of energizing. And when we actually go through and start to bring our knees onto our arms in crow, we want to have that same feeling of lightness. So here's one thing that you might have felt before when you come into crow. Your hands are down, your knees are on your arms. So for the purpose of crow, we'll bring the knees to the outsides of the arms slightly. And when you come forward, the elbows come out to the side. So if you can't see that from the front there, the elbows will come out to the side like this. And you start to get this almost like a collapsing of a structure. So if you've ever seen that magician trick where they have the box and then they collapse the box, the sticks will come out to the side. So in this, we want to be able to press into the structure enough, the structure, of course, being our body, that we don't collapse the elbows. So when we go from plank to chaturanga, we pull the elbows in and draw the elbows in towards the rib cage. The same thing is what we want to be experiencing when we come into our crow pose. We want our hands to be down, the knees come up, the hips come really high up, gaze is in front. I'll come closer to my block. Okay, and now elbows dial in. Shoulders wrap, and we glue the scapula against the shoulder, against the rib cage. From here, gaze is forward, heart is reaching through, navel is pulled in, and now I'm gonna lightly, there's no weight in my hands yet, now I'm gonna lightly set my knees to my arms and squeeze in and pull the abdominal muscles up under the rib cage. So if you are just starting out, you can allow your block to come in front, okay, squeezing in, and you may even want to touch your head lightly onto your block. Your toes don't ever need to lift the ground. The one thing that you don't want to do is look behind you, because that'll spiral your energy forward and down. But what you can do is lean and reach your heart forward. Now, if you allow yourself to come forward and the elbows come out to the side, you can see the structure collapsing. So pull the navel in, pull your knees in, push through your hands, and you'll start to feel that lightness or that lift as your body starts to come away from the ground. So here's a couple of things to try. Okay, taking your block, you can bring it in front of you like we just did. Okay, and you may find that if you have to lean so far down to touch the block with your forehead, you may not need the block in front of you. Instead, put it at a point where you can use it as a drishti, a focal point. Press your hands down, start drawing the elbows in, rolling the shoulders back, just like we did. See how that feels in your body. Lift your hips high up away from the ground, and just try pressing into your hands. And pressing. And you may start to feel where it's more grounded. So the thumb and index finger, pinky finger are down, pressing. A slight bend in your elbows, keeping elbows drawn in. Okay, and now just touching the backs of the knees into your arms. Gazing in front. So now use your core, pull the navel in, try to hollow out your belly. Okay, and find that long, steady breath. So we want to use ujjayi breath, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. Inhaling, narrowing the back of the throat, exhaling through the nose, that ocean-like sound. Halfway through that exhale of, you can close your mouth so it becomes inhaling and exhaling. As you inhale, imagine you're sipping air in through a straw. As you exhale, breathing out through the nose. So starting to find that connection to your breath. Very important that as we work on these flying core practices that we keep our breath steady. So long, steady breaths. Okay, when you're ready, you can press through your hands and now start to draw your elbows over top of your wrist. So you don't really have to think about that. Just know that once the joints are stacked, that's where you'll start to feel lightness in your toes. Squeezing your knees together into your arms, pulling the core in, and imagine that you can float your knees up off of your arms. Long, steady breaths here. Okay? So if you were here in person, I would say, how are you doing so far? Maybe just starting to breathe into that. Notice how that feels. When you're done, just take a moment and shake out your wrists. Okay, releasing everything. So starting to understand the rooting into the ground with your hands, rising everything else out of the ground, keeping your gaze focused. Sometimes I've seen people use a wall where they'll bring their forehead into the wall instead of onto a block. But truly here, what you want to be doing is starting to find that gentle movement forward until your joints stack. When joints stack, that becomes your stability. It's like building a house. Now you can root through the foundation, lifting up. And it's not about how strong you are. It's about how well supported the house is. It's how well supported your body is from the foundation of your root. So thinking about the root always is, if you're building the pose from the floor up, from the mat up, the thing that's touching the ground has to be in the perfect shape for you. So as you build through here, starting to find this root, this lift, okay, pushing through your hand, pull the core in, long, steady breaths, reaching heart forward. Now you can start to feel, okay, I have a sense of lightness. And this may not happen right away, but you start to feel that you can pull up, and it's more internal. There's more of an internal connection going on to that pose. So taking that a little bit further, okay, let's start to open up through our hips. Okay, moving a little bit side to side, bring your feet a little bit wider apart and just sway from one side to the other so that the side body is getting nice and long. Okay, and then soften through your knees and interlace the fingers behind the back and let your hands come up away from your hips. Let your head hang heavy. Okay, and this is going to start to release a little bit through the legs, through the lower back, through the shoulders, and through the neck. So long, steady breaths. Swaying a little bit side to side. And you can try squeezing between the shoulders and allowing your hands to fall a little bit closer to the earth. Keeping as much a bend in the knees as you need. Nice. From here, let your hands soften to the small of your back.
And now release them all the way down to the ground. You may find that there's a bit more space to dangle here. Your hands might touch the ground a little bit easier, or your fingers might be closer to your toes. Okay, so just notice how the body's feeling. Now, in this next pose here, what we want to do is keep the toes pointing straight forward. Okay, toes pointing straight forward, and we want to bend in the knees and take your hands behind. Okay, so from here, deep squat, and let your hands come right behind. So in this position, it's very important that the heel of your hand can actually touch the ground. Now I like to take the space between the index finger and the thumb, and you want to cup your heel right in that L-shaped space. So in both of those spaces, we take the hand behind, and then right away, spread the fingers, and heel comes down. And as you do that, you may find you need to reposition your hands, walk your feet a little bit closer together. So this is our arm pressure pose. So once I get here, I usually pull my shoulders and my elbows through a little bit deeper. Now my hands, when they come down, they're very similar to plank pose, okay? And very similar to crow, all those other shapes. We try and draw the elbows through far enough that when we root down, we can press into our arms with our thighs. So this is where the arm pressure part of the pose comes in. Now from here, you can see my toes, they've become pretty light. So you can try walking them closer together just so that you can hook one toe or one foot behind the other. So this is a really good start, and I'm squeezing into my arms with my legs. Okay, pull the core in, heart is reaching forward and through. And if it's feeling good to take it deeper and all the weight, I can shift a little bit side to side even. I can really feel how balanced it is. If it's feeling good, you can draw your feet back behind you and reach your heart forward. Okay? So there's a few options. Then to come out, one option is to simply place your feet on the ground, release your hands, and then whatever the teacher is guiding you to do, or in your own time, you come out. So take a minute to practice that. Okay? Lifting the hips up really high, creating space for the shoulders to come behind, starting to see if the heel of the hands will come toward the floor. Okay? And then as you move into it, adjusting the space for your feet, adjusting the space for your hands. Okay, so we're almost there. Shaking out our wrists here. And then what we can do now, arm pressure pose is a really good setup for Firefly. So in Firefly, once our hands are behind us here, and we have that nice shape, there's a couple of other options. One thing would be to bring our feet together as we prepare to come into Bhujapadasana. Another one would be to squeeze the legs into the arms and now slowly start to reach the feet away. And breathe here, pulling into the core. Okay? So in that position there, arms can begin to straighten out, and you're reaching your feet out towards the sides. And if you can envision in your mind, there's this nice flow between Bhujapadasana, Tittibhasana, and Bakasana Crow. So it is possible to link all of them together. So let's just take a moment to do a simple flow. Okay? Take a moment to come all the way up to standing. Finding your embodied core by rooting through your feet. So separating the big toe from the pinky toe, press down through the feet. Sway a little bit from side to side. Even bring your hands to your hips and just do some gentle hip circles. Pressing through the outside edges of the feet, and just notice where your body is in space. Once you've gone a couple of times in one direction, change the direction the other way. Move in slow motion. See how your body is feeling. Arriving back at center, root through your feet. As you press into your root, feel the activation of your legs. Reach your fingertips down. As you press through your feet and activate the root, lift up through your heart center, lift up through the midline, lift through your crown, shoulders drawing down. Nice. Take an exhale, release all the air. Inhale. Exhale through the mouth.
root through your feet. Inhale, reach your arms up, extend. Pull the navel in, and as you exhale, hips come back. Hinge from the hips, fold forward at the waist. Hands on the shins or on the ground. Inhale, halfway lift, nice strong core. Exhale, plant the palms, step or hop back into your plank. Press the floor away, lower knees if you need, otherwise glue elbows in. Come down into chaturanga. Roll forward on the toes, taking baby cobra or shoulders back, lifting the heart, looking up into upward facing dog. Pull the core in, reach your sitting bones back and up. Downward facing dog. Nice. Soften your knees, look to your hands, getting ready to step, hop into squat, bringing your feet lightly behind your wrists, sinking your hips down low. Squat is a great prep for crow. Letting your elbows come to the insides of the knees, hands together. Okay, elbows pressing knees back, knees pressing into elbows. Pull the navel in. You can always use a block underneath of your sitting bones here, or you can keep hands on the ground to help finding your balance. Okay, and long, steady breaths. So finding your root again, press through your feet and lift through your crown. In every pose, we're always energizing our whole body, even if it's just to feel the expansion, to feel how the breath creates space. And now every exhalation, we can gently relax parts of our body to move deeper into that space, or simply to hold the position we're in. Okay. Circle out your wrists if you need. Okay. And then starting to move through here, finding your hands behind your feet. Okay, and start to walk your feet close together for Bhuja Padasana, arm pressure. Bringing your hands down, okay? And you can allow your elbows to slide further back, reach your heart through, tucking one toe behind the ankle. Feel free to bring your feet back behind you, reaching your chin and your chest down towards the floor. Okay, lifting your heart forward and up. In your own time, start to press into your arms, reaching your legs away. They might be straight, they might be bent. Then if it feels good, bringing one foot behind you, reaching the other foot behind you, and you start to find yourself in the shape of crow. Readjust if you need, because sometimes it takes time to find that proper positioning all the way through. Heart reaching through, find variation with blocks. Long, steady breaths here. Okay. One version that you might find when you come through here, and you can come out whenever you're ready, is that you may want to bring your feet down as I did from the pose, or you may want to start stepping or hopping your way back. So in your floating backwards and forwards, there's an upward flying or a drawing in of the core and starting to create that sense of lightness in the body. When you have yourself near the top of the mat and you're lifted up in your crow, you can start to find a little bit of this shape. And it's almost as you're moving in, you want to imagine that you're pulling your core in, pulling and lifting your hips as you release your knees from the backs of your arms and set your feet back towards the edge of the mat. Sometimes you'll find that you'll just instantly fall out. The second you try and bring your knees up and off, the hop can be quite challenging. The other thing that you might find is that it takes time, but slowly and surely you can dynamically move it to find that lightness where you're softly lifting up and floating back. That can take years and years of practice. So be very patient with yourself. Always check in before attempting any of these movements. Notice how your body is feeling and what's practical for your practice today. We always want to try and make movements in and out of poses as static and controlled as possible. So checking in, letting your hands ground, and the gaze is forward. Knees are touching arms, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate a float back, or a hop back rather, pressing through your hands, finding lightness. Always using breath to guide you through these dynamic movements. So in that there, you'll see that lift, feet go back, soft landing, and then slowly lowering down into chaturanga, moving through. So let's just take a moment to recap. Creating space and openness in our forearms, using a soft tissue release, checking the range of motion to know what's actually present in our bodies. What kind of range of motion do we have through our shoulders, through our wrists as we're coming through here. And then doing some wrist circles with the hands grounded on the mat, trying that reverse table, making sure that we know what position feels best on our wrist to bear weight to lift up. From there, working at finding that connection to core, finding our ujjayi breath, setting our shoulders when we start to prepare to lift up. Noticing if our elbows are flagging out to the side, if we're starting to draw elbows in to create that more sustainable, contained core. And then starting to weight bear slowly, lifting knees up onto arms, maybe with the block in front, helping to find the balance, feeling as if the knees are always pulling up away from our elbows, finding lightness in our bodies, lightness in our core. And then exploring other variations. You may find Bhuja Padasana is a little bit easier, that arm pressure pose to attempt, or you may find it's more challenging given how tight it is in your shoulders or what kind of openness there is in your hips. So just looking at your own body, your own goals, how your body is responding to the shapes that we're starting to work them through, keeping core connection, keeping breath, and always rooting and finding the lift, the rise out of our foundation. Let's take a moment just to center here. Root down through your sitting bones. Find a comfortable sitting position, lifting up through the crown of the head, letting shoulders roll up towards the ears, and then drawing them back and down. Let your hands gently rest on your knees for grounding. Take a couple full deep breaths here, in and out through your nose. And let your hands come up into heart center. Ending our practice today with one collective Om. Taking an exhale, release all the air in the lungs. Inhale to Om. Thank you again for watching, for your time and energy today. My name is Krista, and this was Learn to Fly. Namaste.